Hello and welcome to Mediation Works. I'm Wendy Lakusta and I'm here with my colleague Sharon Sutherland. And today we have a special guest, Elaine McCormack. And Elaine specializes in strata disputes, which I'm sure is a very hot topic right now. And so just to sort of jump right into it, Elaine, maybe we could talk a little bit about what kinds of issues might be appropriate for mediation related to strata disputes.
I find that generally they kind of go into three different categories. So the first category is generally the business disputes. For instance, a strata corporation may have a dispute with a contractor. Strata corporation may also have a dispute with a developer. And so those types of mediations happen very frequently. We also have potential mediations between owners and strata corporations, issues such as bylaw enforcement, and those happen less often. And perhaps the area in which mediation should be used the most in strata corporations is the least frequently used, and that's just the disputes between owners and owners. Things like nuisance disputes, unreasonable interferences with the use of land, for instance, things like smoking and loud parties, and just those living disputes that you have with people that you share space with.
Yeah. So many of all those kinds of things that we might think of in terms of neighbor disputes in another context, but in often an even tighter kind of environment.
That's right. And so those neighbor disputes are difficult, I think, for people to bring to mediation sometimes because they don't have that foundation of a relationship. In fact, the relationship may have really started with the dispute, and it's very difficult, I think, for them to bring it to mediation, but I've seen it been very successful in the times that I've been involved in it, because you can come up with a creative solution that the courts or an arbitrator could never order.
And Elaine, I'm thinking that maybe what we want to do is really concentrate on those ones, because as you say, they may be the ones that find their way to mediation the least often, but perhaps are best suited to mediation in some ways.
I would be delighted to talk about those types of disputes, yes.
Yeah. So what do you see as the benefits in those kinds of disputes to go to mediation?
One of the benefits is that you are going to live with, generally these people end up living together for years. And so there's a relationship building aspect, whereas if you go to court or you go to arbitration, it's very difficult. Some of these nuisance disputes just never get dealt with at all if they don't go to mediation. One of the concerns that I have is the way that the court system is set out. You really have to take them to the Supreme Court of British Columbia in order to get relief for a nuisance type dispute, if indeed the judge is going to do it. And because there's often issues of credibility, you're looking at a full trial with live witnesses, and potentially each party may be paying $100,000 in legal fees to do that.
Wow.
So
So
that's crazy.
Something that might come up when you've got a noise problem, a barking dog, and it could cost that much to get to a resolution. Is that the kind of thing we're talking about?
That's the kind of thing we're talking about, because actually small claims court doesn't have jurisdiction over ordering people to do things like injunctive relief. And so in fact, if you're looking for a resolution of those types of disputes through the court system, you're looking at a very expensive process, and maybe a process that results in a judge really not being able to order something that's workable or something that really results in an end to the problem.
Wow.
Right, and a huge amount of time and stress and money involved.
A huge amount of time and stress and money, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So Elaine, there's some people who are hearing about mediation and they're thinking that, maybe I'd like to try that. That might actually work with me and my neighbor. But how do I get there? What do I do to actually get a mediator involved?
There's just so many routes in order to do that. I know that a lot of strata councils are very supportive of mediation because they have a difficult time dealing with these neighbor disputes as well. And some of these neighbor disputes, for instance, smoking, become potential bylaw enforcement issues for them. So sometimes the council may even agree that the strata corporation will pay for the mediation. So it may be important or worth it for an owner to talk to the council and see if they're supportive of it, and even supportive as far as paying for part or all of the mediation. Another possibility is just to talk to the neighbor and see if they're willing to go through that process. And I do know of times when people have used the small claims process, even though perhaps small claims doesn't have jurisdiction over the issue, to utilize the mediation process there.
Yeah, and Sharon and I are nodding because we're both small claims mediators, so we do see them in the small claims.
Well, and I was going to say, I think one that I saw recently it really reinforced everything you've said about it, because I was fascinated. I sat down at the table, and the person who was making a claim against the Strata Council started the mediation by saying, well, this goes back 30 years. And I thought, oh no, but everybody who was there for the Strata Council said, yes, it does. We have to start there. And it was fascinating to see how they actually were able to resolve something that had been festering and had become this interpersonal challenge for many, many years.
And that's so wonderful, because small claims mediations go on for how long? 2 hours?
2 hours. It was astonishing to me.
Amazing.
But it was people who wanted to have the conversation and hadn't found a tool for it. And
so they were
I think,
very willing.
Yeah,
to
very
come to
willing.
the table. Yeah.
Yeah. Just on the how you get there. I was going to say the other place I've seen them, Elaine, and I don't know how often you see this, but I'm on the roster for the Justice Access Center for people who might be finding difficulty finding mediators because of low income.
Yes.
And so some of the low income or co-op housings are referred out to mediators on that roster who are willing to do lower fee structure mediations for people in those situations.
And some pro bono as well.
And some pro bono as well.
So that would be a great resource. I've also seen people use the British Columbia Arbitration and Mediation Institute website and Mediate BC websites and work through the individuals there to see if they find somebody suitable.
Terrific.
Excellent. So Elaine, can we talk a little bit about who might attend these mediations and how what the process might look like?
Well, that's something the parties really get to decide for themselves. You know, part, I think, of getting to come to a solution with each other is also coming to decide how they're going to go through the process. And so they can potentially have support people there. They may want the Strata Corporation there because maybe the Strata Corporation has a part to play in coming up with a solution for the problem. And there's just a possibility, for instance, I've had cases, for instance, dealing with noise from hardwood floors, where it's been helpful to have an expert involved, let's say an acoustical engineer. So there's all sorts of people that can attend, and really it goes to who's going to be helpful in working through the process and coming to a solution.
So, Elaine, are there any other considerations you could think of that would you would consider or modify the mediation process to suit a particular situation or dispute?
Well, it's important to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, and one of those factors is location. And so to consider what location is maybe a neutral location. There is also times when it's important to maybe come out and see what the person is complaining about. So, you know, how does it sound from that person's unit? And should you have part of the mediation actually in the unit with certain people walking above and listening to the noise below and all of those things? The other thing is to consider the people involved and how they can best work towards a solution. For instance, if you're dealing with somebody in early stages of dementia, it may be important to consider what time of day works best for them, whether that's first thing in the morning or some other time, so that they can fully participate in the process.
Wow, so it sounds like you could be working with just a really wide range of people and still make it work.
I've seen it work with a wide range of people and a wide range of topics, and it's amazing sometimes the level of cooperation that can come out of these mediations.
So, Elaine, do you have any final comments you'd like to make about anything strata related and disputes?
Well, I'm so delighted to have participated in this video. I find so many of these disputes get sidetracked, and it's not the fault of the parties. Oftentimes, when people look at possible ways of dealing with it through a dispute resolution process, the owner ends up taking the Strata Corporation to court for non-enforcement of the bylaws. And it really doesn't deal with the situation with the other owner at all. And in fact, it doesn't result in a solution to the problem.
Okay. Well, I want to just say thank you so much for being here with us and giving us all of this information around strata disputes. Because it sounds like this is an area where people need to know mediation might be a tool they can use.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Elaine.